Hello and welcome back to the Middling Along podcast and our first episode of 2025. Joining me today is Dr Nicky Keay, who's a medical doctor with expertise in the field of exercise endocrinology. She's a lecturer at University College London, and her clinical and research work is particularly interested in women experiencing perimenopause and menopause, but also with exercisers, dancers and athletes. Her book, Myths of Menopause, was published at the end of last year, and she's very kindly come along to talk to us about it today. Welcome to the podcast, Nicky.
Brilliant. Thanks for having me.
So my first question, I guess, is there are now, at this point, quite a few books about perimenopause, menopause out there on the market. What was it that made you decide to write this one in particular, and why is it different?
Because I was addressing it from the point of view, as the title suggests, Myths of Menopause. So rather than this is a dry, boring guide, handbook, and also, frankly, there are definitely some personal bits in it, but equally, some of the books are just sort of like a personal recount of the person. And so, but on the other hand, I didn't want to have a dry, boring, formulaic guidebook. So the myths is something sort of in between, if you like. And the other big reason for Myths of Menopause is I really love all those Greek myths and stuff like that. So when my publisher said, because I've already written one book called Hormones, Health and Human Performance. Mm-hmm. And so that one, I love bringing in little quotes, myths, things like this, to get the person thinking. And so when he said, okay, Myths of Menopause, it's like, I've got it. I love it. So it's a bit of a story. A story, but it's definitely factual, so people shouldn't think it's sort of a wishy-washy thing. But it's all linked with this story. And the front cover of Myths of Menopause is Athena, who is the goddess of wisdom. And on her shield, I put in some hormones and the words of hormone in ancient Greek. And by the way, because I talk a lot about the female hormone odyssey, right? So every single woman over her lifetime, it is a hormone odyssey. Things change. And there are different stages in this, and it's all part of this journey. But I do want to point out that the original Odyssey, as in Odysseus and his Odyssey, taking 10 years to get back from Troy to Ithaca, a long-winded route and various perils and challenges, the person that was guiding him on that journey was Athena, a female goddess of wisdom. So that's the sort of this little bit of a story behind it. Here is a book where Athena, in the guise of my various collaborators, contributors, authors, I've written some of it as well, but we're all absolutely passionate and, we've got really good level of expertise from all around the world. We are our own, we're sort of versions of Athena, delivering our pearls of wisdom so that women, by reading this book, will hopefully have an enjoyable read, number one, taken on this journey by Athena, but also can benefit from different views and areas of expertise. I mean, I probably could have written the whole thing myself, but I'm not an expert in, cognitive function, like Professor Amy Spector, for example, who's written something in the book about, the effects of the hormones changing and cognitive function. So people can be assured that they are hearing from the top leaders in this field internationally. I've also got contributors from the US, from Canada, from, Europe, loads of places, New Zealand. So, people can read this book in an enjoyable way, not dry, boring, but also not, wondering, is this really authentic? Is this really good information I'm reading? They can also be reassured that it is really solid information and written in a way I hope that people can relate to. And I found that people really liked in my first book, they liked sort of hormone stories. So to bring it to life, I asked all my contributors, and in my pieces, I've written little stories, all right, which people can hopefully relate to. So they're reading, the myth busting, but then they can see it in practice in, a mythical woman, who is experiencing exactly this. So, yeah, I really hope that people will find it an enjoyable and informative read.
No, I was going to say you definitely have packed in an awful lot of wisdom there. You really do have. I mean, I haven't counted how many contributors you've got, but yeah, it could be dozens, I guess, in there writing about their specific areas of expertise. So, as you say, you could have collated all of that and rewritten it. But I think there's something really special about hearing from people who are at the top of their field, explaining exactly what they're best at. I mean, obviously, we would be here quite a while if we tried to unpack all of the myths that you're trying to cover in here. So maybe we could just pick out a few of them. I mean, if I had to sort of push you and say, what do you think are the three most sort of prevalent / pernicious of the myths that we get fed, particularly through media, social media, because there's so much noise, isn't there, now around menopause? Putting you a little bit on the spot, but what do you think are the sort of the three, or maybe four, if you want to kind of push it to four, that are the most important ones that you're kind of unpacking here in the book?
Well, I think that the word menopause. If you ask people, what does that word menopause mean to you? Most people, I think, would say, if they haven't read the book, would think that, oh my gosh, it's really like, that's really bad. Oh, that means being old. That means being, not having any purpose or to your life, all these sorts of things. And so the view that this really negative view, which I think is bound up with, for the majority of women, I want to stress, menopause is something, is this natural female hormone odyssey that every woman will experience in her lifetime. And for the majority of women, this will be, the average age is 51. I'm not ignoring, by the way, that there will be younger, we'll come to women, but we'll come to that maybe later. But for the majority of women, this is a natural part of this female hormone odyssey we're talking about. So I think the main myth is that people looking at it in such a negative way, because it's bound up generally with you are a little bit older, maturer, I would say, with more wisdom. And also that it's viewed as an illness, a disease, a condition. You see something like this. So that is the main myth, that, for the majority of women, this is a natural process. And yes, you will probably be in your, 50s, right? But then we have to really ask ourselves, is this ageism we're talking about? By the way, men get older as well. Just saying.
They get away with a lot more than we.
Exactly. So, but then so I think wrapped up in this negative conception are two problems. Number one, are we actually discriminating and is ageism here implicated in this? Okay. And after all, in Japan, they don't even have a word for menopause. They call it the second spring because they revere their elders and the elders who have all this wisdom, etc. So number one, just to make clear, just because you're getting a little bit older doesn't mean you're like, on a downward trend. So that's one. And the second thing is it isn't an illness, a disease and condition. It's a natural, for the vast majority of women, a natural physiological process that, we recognize and say, okay, this is happening. What can we do to make the most out of this part of our hormone odyssey? You see what I mean? So I think that is the main myth there, that the menopause is not a negative thing, right? Or we should change. Let's change, flip it on its head. Let's change the narrative. Let's think more in Japanese terms. There are some positives. But this also brings up a third and slightly uncomfortable one. So we got ageism maybe, right? Illness, disease. And also, that it does mean for sure, menopause means you can't have children anymore. You can't reproduce. And so are we in danger?
Past our sell-by date.
That view that, okay, your main purpose as a woman is to reproduce. Now you can't. Now that's it. It's like, we've got some other things going for us. Thank you very much. After all, I'm not saying that it's not a significant thing. Whether you've chosen or not chosen or been able to have children, regardless, it is significant. So I'm absolutely not saying that this is a significant thing, that you don't have a choice anymore as a woman. But that's her personal choice, by the way. You know what I mean? It's to do with her. She shouldn't be now looked at as she can't reproduce anymore. It's like, well, what, sort of thing. So I think there are lots of negative things floating around. That is the main myth. And those are, I think, broken down into those 3 points. And so actually, it's not just the woman herself, but it's actually in general terms. We have to reflect and think, are we, as society or as a group, thinking that older means worse, you know. And I can say this now that I am of that age older, so I get it. But I think also the other point is that the negativity around female hormones starts actually with the youngsters, with the teenagers. Because as a teenager whose periods are starting, she's embarking on this female hormone odyssey, even at that young age. Oh, it's always stressed. Oh gosh, you don't get pregnant. It's all about, oh, don't get pregnant. And it's sort of, oh gosh, these periods, they're really awful, menstrual cycles. It's all so much negativity. So if you've already been programmed to think as a 15-year-old or younger, 12-year-old, that hormones are dreadful and female hormones are a nuisance and whatever, then instead, again, rather than accepting, this is a turbulent time, by the way, a bit like when you reach menopause, when the hormones are turbulent again. So, it's also that the understanding of hormones are amazing, powerful things. They direct the expression of our DNA. It's like, wow, that's incredible. So rather than all this negative talk, we should be celebrating hormones and also accepting and celebrating the fact that they go through this change. It's not all just one monotone, thankfully.
So we should all be getting better at understanding our own biology. And I think definitely, you're talking there about that sort of ageism, gendered ageism, the sort of shelf life. I think even though we generally in the UK at least, we're talking now more about perimenopause, about menopause, and that is a good thing. I think there is still quite a lot of that sort of stigma around, almost, and especially I think in kind of workplaces about almost like outing yourself as somebody that is kind of menopausal or postmenopausal, like, are people going to look at me differently? Are they going to make assumptions about, who I am as a person based on this, which is, as you say, it's only one part of our whole. It's that flip side, isn't it, of the sort of the broader awareness, more publicity, is when we are hearing a lot of those negative messages, that's the thing that people internalize.
Yeah, exactly. And then they start to doubt themselves. Because if you're hearing all this noise and then you sort of self-analyze and get, caught up in, what are people thinking? And am I slipping up and something like this? But rather than when you reach menopause, let's say that it is the average age around about 51. For example, as a doctor, I've been a doctor now for over 30 years or whatever. And actually, when I reached menopause, it was actually, I've accumulated all this experience and everything like this. And the same for any person's line of work, or even if it's not in their work, in whatever they're doing, whatever they've been doing, all that life experience they've accumulated up to that point doesn't suddenly vanish. So that's really the crucial thing. Just because the hormones have changed doesn't mean that you have to, just because the ovaries have retired doesn't mean you have to retire from what you want to do in your life or what you can do in your life. It's just a little bit of an adjustment that you have to make. And so if I could move on to the second myth, maybe, because you asked me at the beginning, what are the main ones? So the first one is definitely negative talk and everything like this. Gendered ageism. What a great, I remember that phrase. Anyway, should we be starting this positive talk from a very young age, actually, right? Rather than approaching it once the person is there, just from the young age at school, making it a positive conversation and mentioning the word menopause then, because I think hopefully at school, the youngsters will understand the menstrual cycle, blah, 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 blah. But it's like, why would you just read the first chapter of the book? Or shouldn't you tell them the whole plot? Yeah, maybe you don't want to go into the full details of menopause, but so they know that they understand that this is a continuum, you see. So yeah, those aspects. So the second myth really that I wanted to try and bust in this book is that, as you said, it's so lively on social media, etc. And let's be honest, who doesn't want a quick fix? Who doesn't? Let's be frank and honest. And so, it's only.
And some people will pay good money for it.
Well, that's the problem.
Think that's what they're getting.
Exactly. So then you can be sucked into, if I follow this menopause diet, or I have these particular supplements, I do this specific exercise, I do the magic bullet or whatever we want to call it, then that is going to be the solution. But people probably are feeling so confused and maybe have been swamped a bit with this negativity. Of course, they are looking for quick solutions. I totally understand it and get it. But I'm afraid it's not reality. And so the reality is, which I discuss in my book about mastering menopause, what are you going to do? What are you going to do to take control? Your hormones have changed, so you have to respect that and accept it. And so in turn, you have to probably modify and review what you're doing, because hormones are affected by what we do. Hippocrates said 2,000 years ago, so I refer to Hippocrates rather than the more modern day versions. He said that if we could give every individual just the right amount of nourishment, just the right amount of exercise, not too little, not too much, we would have found the surest way to health. Okay, he didn't realize it at the time, 2,000 years ago, but basically what he was talking about, that how hormones adapt and respond to our behaviors around exercise, nutrition and sleep. But if your internal hormones have changed, which they do at menopause, we've discussed that, then obviously you have to change your inputs. So if you change your car to diesel fuel, you don't put petrol in it anymore. You change, you know what I mean? So you have to respect that your body is a little bit different inside and your hormones have changed. It's like, okay, fine, get it. So now let's have a look at these things you're doing and see if you need to tweak them. So newsflash, there is no such thing as a menopause diet. It's just a basic healthy diet, but maybe some tweaks and modifications, more protein, for example. Exercise, we should be exercising, covering all the aspects of fitness, but sure, maybe a little bit more biased towards strength training if possible. For example, you see what I mean? So it's not that you chuck everything out and you just bring in this, one solution. It's look at the tools you have under your control and just modify what you're doing there. So I think that's the big second myth. There isn't some quick fix thing. But this is good. It means that you can take control, take charge, and also, frankly, put some responsibility on you, if I could put it that way as well, because you're right, you can spend a lot of money. Because I show some interest in menopause things, I get bombarded, it seems, on social media, and it's quite amusing actually. It's like, oh, what's the flavor of the day, and there's some new supplement. I really can't keep up with it, So you can spend a lot of money and actually not achieve what you want to achieve when it's actually under your control. So it's a positive message.
I mean, you've got a particular specialism in sort of exercise, and I was really interested to see. I didn't realise until I started reading the book, actually, that you've got a chapter there from Dr. Alyssa Olenek,
yes,
who I follow on social media, who is somebody that I,
yes,
really
exactly,
do trust.
Really factual, yeah.
Who, her, if you're not already following her, I definitely recommend seeking her out if you're an Instagram person. But I think that again, it that's another thing that I find particularly confusing, is the sort of, we're hearing people sort of talking about cortisol in relation to, to exercise, and, we should be avoiding certain types of exercise because they're going to spike our cortisol and increase our belly fat. If I could ban the word belly fat from everyone's vocabulary, that I would, because sets my hackles up.
Visceral fat, that's fair enough, but you're right. But also the thing that I'm going to also fly the flag and speak up for hormones, because they can't speak. The thing that really gets me riled, if you see someone talking about hormone imbalance, that's not medical. Don't read any further. Because
yes, do this to balance your hormones.
No.
That's the most.
The thing is that hormones have had millions of years of evolution. They know quite well how to, if we want to use this word balance, I don't know, whatever, to adapt, more precisely, adapt to what we're giving them in terms of exercise, nutrition, sleep. So I'm afraid it's not anything, don't blame the hormones. The hormones are evolved to adapt to what you're doing, and they are programmed to follow a time course over your life. Simple as that. Men and women, when we get to our 50s, growth hormone decreases. Growth hormone is important for maintaining body composition, preventing the deposition of visceral fat, and encouraging muscle formation, for example. Men and women, by the way. All right. But for women, yes, the dramatic change in the hormone are, of course, those of the female reproductive system with menopause, right? So the hormones are absolute. This is why I love hormones. They're amazing, fascinating, brilliant. They direct the expression of DNA. I remind you of that. And they are programmed to do their best to keep everything, keep you as healthy. They're programmed. to keep
and they
you as
don't
healthy
act
as
in
possible.
isolation as well. That's the other
Yes,
thing
exactly. And
that
they're
kind
all
of
talking to
people
each
forget
other.
about.
Exactly. But the crucial point is they're influenced by what you do. So don't blame the hormones saying they're imbalanced. No way. Okay, there are a few medical conditions, it's true, where maybe it goes wrong. Fair enough. But aside from those, the hormones know what to do. They're programmed, they will adapt to what you do. So with all due respect, it's not the hormones that are unbalanced, it's probably what you're doing, your lifestyle. You're not doing what Hippocrates said, and you haven't got that right combination, balance of the nutrition, the exercise, etc. But you're right, people get bamboozled and misled, I'll be frank, about, cortisol goes up and, oh, my goodness, blood glucose goes up. Who knew it if you ate? But yes, we have a hormone, thankfully, insulin, that deals with that. Anyway, unless you're diabetic. I think that trying to focus in and home in and blame the hormones is the wrong approach, because it makes people feel annoyed with their body, which you don't want to be doing. You want to be in harmony and in tune with your hormone. But as I say, I also want to say that this is positive. This means you can take control, you can take charge, going back to that original point, really.
And you do, it's not that you're not talking about hormone replacement therapy or menopause hormone therapy in the book. You do have a specific section that calls that out. And for some people, obviously, going down that route is something that actually can help them, make those kind of lifestyle changes, look at
Sure.
the exercise, the nutrition, if they kind of have a little bit of input on that side of things.
So, but the order of the book is I do talk about the lifestyle first, because every woman can do that. Because there will be some women who, sadly, for whom they can't take HRT. Every woman can take charge, use this as an opportunity to review, refresh your lifestyle. So, yeah, I suppose the third myth now we're on to is HRT. So, and I've written that chapter because I describe it, going back to my Greek myths, as a situation of Scylla and Charybdis. So when Odysseus had to do this long-winded return journey home, there was one situation where he had to navigate between Scylla and Charybdis, which one
was the whirlpool? I'm trying to remember. Or they're both whirlpools.
One's a whirlpool, and one is a six-headed human-eating monster. But okay. The point is that this is how HRT is portrayed. It's like there's one camp, the whirlpool lot or whatever, who are saying, look, you should not touch HRT with a barge pole. It's, artificial, blah, 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 blah. And then there's the other group, because they argue, which this bit is correct. It's not a disease. I get it. Yes, accept. And then there's the other group that said, listen, don't even waste your time, particularly with all that lifestyle. Just go straight for the medication, max dose, throw in testosterone, really go for it. But it's such polarized views. It's not helpful for the woman. So when you're approaching this decision, then the first thing is make sure you've nailed your lifestyle. But you make a very good point. You might actually be feeling so lacking in energy and deprived of sleep that actually you really, with all, you just can't do what you should be doing, right? And doing your strength training or something. So you're right that HRT can make you feel a bit better, so you can do it. And that brings us to the main indication for HRT, is quality of life. So if you are really struggling, you've done all your lifestyle, or you want to do your lifestyle, but you just haven't got the energy, then HRT, absolutely. I mean, why should we, really have a tough time? Because after all, we're going to spending a third of our life in menopause, post-menopause, menopausal state, whatever you want to call it. So I don't know about everyone else, but I want that third of my life to be as good as possible. So if HRT is going to help me achieve that quality of life and continue doing whatever I want to do, my job, my activities, then, kind of like, why wouldn't you? And also, by the way, HRT reduces all-cause mortality. So this is the other big myth under the subheading of HRT, that HRT causes breast cancer. It's true there's a slight increased risk. Between the ages of 50 and 59, there are 23 women, sadly, who will develop breast cancer. Fortunately, that doesn't necessarily mean nowadays with early detection, treatment, etc., that you will die. But nevertheless, I totally accept it's a significant diagnosis if you get that. And if you take HRT, then there's an extra 4 cases per 1,000 women. This is the same increased risk as taking the oral contraceptive pill. No one ever tells you that, do they?
Well, we certainly don't hear people banging on about that
exactly.
on social media.
And compared to the risk if you are overweight. Being overweight is the main risk factor for breast cancer. And this really massive increase, 24 extra cases. So 4 extra cases with HRT is quite small in comparison. And a woman who is doing 2.5 hours or more of exercise per week, it decreases the risk of breast cancer to the tune of 7 cases. So if you do your maths, increase of 4 with HRT, decrease of 7, you see, with exercise, you see where I'm going. So I'm not here to say I'm not in the camp that says every woman should take HRT, but what I am in the camp always of saying is that every woman should be able to make an informed decision. That is the crucial thing. She needs to know the facts and not listen to all the hype. And that's why I try and do my chapter. I give it in clear terms, and then there's the information so you can make your choice without having to listen to misinformation. So, and also the other interesting thing is that HRT is now, in the UK at least, the primary intervention for poor bone health, both in premenopausal women and postmenopausal. I got nice to change the guidelines for the premenopausal women, because there are some women, I see a lot of them, who are over-exercising, under-fueling, REDS, relative energy deficiency in sport, and they are at risk of poor bone health. And of course, I'm going to work with them to try and restore their menstrual cycles. But in the meantime, if I'm really concerned about their bone health, and there are certain criteria of this is the bone health is not so good, then HRT is going to support bone health in a temporary way for 6 months or however long it takes, not the oral contraceptive pill. And I've got nice to change the guidelines. So I think that's another really important thing to bear in mind, that HRT is the name we use generally in the UK, hormone replacement therapy. I accept that the word replacement is a red flag for some.
Bit misleading.
Yeah, that sounds like you've got to replace something that's missing. And so therefore in the US, for example, they tend to use MHT, right? Menopause hormone therapy. So I get the rationale. But number one, HRT just runs off the tongue, and we all know what it is. And also it acknowledges that there will be women who haven't reached menopause, who will need HRT, like the group I've discussed, and also going back to those women who experience early, it's not even menopause, we call it primary ovarian insufficiency. So women whose ovaries are you're sort of on the verge, right? And not working so well. We absolutely say, please take HRT because of your bone health, your cognitive function, and your cardiovascular risk. But it would be absolutely, in my opinion, unacceptable clinically, and to say to a 21-year-old, you're going to take menopause hormone therapy when she's not actually officially menopausal, because she's got POI, primary ovarian insufficiency. And you've already dealt her that significant thing. And now, you see what I mean? Or a woman whose periods have stopped. They're not menopausal. So that's why I think the name, let's just leave it as it is. It saves confusion, and also it acknowledges there will be other women. And I just quickly wanted to add there, sort of in this myth of HRT, no, it doesn't cause breast cancer. I think we've established that. But also, absolutely, I have breast cancer. I've got a dear friend who has breast cancer, and, I'm not saying this is not a significant disease, but the main cause of death in postmenopausal women is cardiovascular disease, not breast cancer. And if you take HRT within 10 years of reaching menopause, then it reduces your risk of cardiovascular disease. Although the main indication for taking HRT is quality of life. And the other thing I want to just quickly finish on with HRT is that, actually, I think we do a pretty good job. I know everyone moans and complains about the NHS, and yeah, we all know that there are some things that aren't so good, etc. But in terms of HRT, there is now available the prepaid prescription for HRT, which covers all HRT products. So
apart from testosterone, I think.
Not for testosterone. For HRT, estrogen and progesterone, by the way, which is usually, and also vaginal estrogen, by the way, which most women can take. And so that is £19 a year, and that's a pretty good deal. Yes, apart from testosterone, which we can discuss separately. But so that's why that chapter hopefully will set the record straight and be clear about the pros and honestly, openly about the pros and cons of HRT, so that the readers feel they're informed, they have the information, so they can make that informed decision and not get diverted by the loud voices of either Scylla or Charybdis.
I guess there are a few people that kind of maybe, let's say, fall into a bit of a grey area, and whether maybe they're not quite at the sort of, that cutoff point, that sort of 45 years, but they're still getting symptoms. And what's your sort of advice for people who are really sort of struggling, maybe in that kind of 40 to 45-year-old space, whether maybe they're getting pushback from their GP, they're being told that they're too young to be, in perimenopause?
Yeah, well, perimenopause is the ovaries going part-time, as I usually describe it. And usually it's can start from 40. Typically, you'll see shortened cycles actually initially, because you're not ovulating, shortened, heavier bleeding, because estrogen actually, relatively speaking, is high compared to progesterone, and hot flushes, vasomotor symptoms. But the real challenging thing is that it's so variable. You might actually have quite a few symptoms and really be struggling, and then you'll have some months where everything seems to be fine again. But I know this is frustrating, but that is the definition of perimenopause: uncertainty. It's up and down like this, you see. We can't be sure. And this is also why it's not recommended to do blood tests, especially if you're over 45. And if you're getting symptoms, that's good enough. We can pretty much confidently say it's based on symptoms, really, because the hormones are so variable. It's true. If we're being absolutely, really looking at the details, HRT is licensed for once you've reached menopause. It's true. But the British Menopause Society, of which I'm a member, and I've done their recent training course, updated training course for doctors, they said that if there's this perimenopause, uncertainty, quality of life, I refer back to that term, quality of life, if you're really struggling with symptoms, then you shouldn't be told, it's like invalidating your symptoms.
Suck it up for another 5 years and
it's
come
like,
back
well,
then.
why? But there's just as they say there's no arbitrary limit for how long you should take HRT, equally there's no arbitrary limit to when you should start it. Of course, it will be tailored for the individual. And if the woman is still having some sort of periods, some sort of cycles, then you're going to try, but really struggling with symptoms. And she's done her best. She's done all the lifestyle stuff. It's like, look, I'm really struggling here. Then, of course you wouldn't withhold HRT, but you would give it in a way that's going to try to what we call sequential HRT. So you take the progesterone bit in blocks, right? So if you are getting pushback from your GP and being, told you're too young, you can just politely say, well, that's funny, because the British Menopause Society, you can look at the website, says that, just as there's no arbitrary limit, there's no arbitrary starting point. What's the difference between being 44 and suffering with symptoms and 45 and having symptoms? It's a chronological age. We're talking about biological age. See? Different thing, really.
Yeah. So just being a bit more pushy in terms of advocating, but with the right.
One has to be diplomatic. Let's put it this way. We all know in life, if you want something, it's better just to do it in a nice way and say, I've read the British Menopause Society website, and go with your evidence, the informed patient. No, like this. And I'm really struggling. I've tried everything. Say what you've done. I really would like to try low dose, etc. And I think then you'll probably, hopefully, find a positive result. If not, get in touch with me and I'll have a chat with you. But you see what I mean? So I think that's the thing. Being as informed as you can, and doing as much as you can yourself in terms of the lifestyle. And you've done that, because then you can go and present that you are being proactive. You've done this, you've done your research, you're informed. Then it makes it a little bit more of an easy conversation, because ultimately, if you go in wanting something, you have to portray in a way that actually, then the GP thinks they've made the decision. It's a collaborative thing. Collaborative is really the word I'm looking for.
And in terms of that kind of getting that information, that education, you're involved with the In Tune project at UCL. What's the latest on that?
So I'm, as you said at the beginning, I'm an honorary clinical lecturer at UCL, and I've got some colleagues, and we've got together, and we are working on In Tune, which is basically an information support program. That's what it is. So it's kind of doing what we're doing, let's thrash it out. Let's talk about what it is, what's going on, all this sort of thing. And also that supportive element to it. So where we are with that is that we've got it started. We've had focus groups. We have had meetings. I think you've come to them to get, a real sort of feeling for what people want, what women want, what's needed, and putting it together. So the next step in that is that we want to do this really properly. So as you know, there are so many menopause courses out there. I've lost count, but this one has got to be super high quality. It's got to be evidence based. So our step now, we're going to be applying for a grant to run it and get feedback effectively, I suppose you could say.
So
did it exactly? Did women find it useful? Did actually it make a difference to how they went about approaching things and feeling better and whatever? So that is going to be the key point that will distinguish this from the myriad of other offerings that are out there. Some of them might be good. I don't know. I haven't got time to look at all of them. But obviously, if you're saying, look, this is a program that has evidence behind it, and it's been done by something like UCL, it's got really high quality. Exactly. Then people will have more confidence that, it's going to be really good, helpful information and support.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming to talk to us today, Nicky. I will put a link in the show notes to where people can get hold of a copy of your book. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Middling Along podcast. Do remember to subscribe to be notified when our next episode is live. And why not visit the blog at www.middlingalong.com to sign up to my newsletter as well. I do hope you enjoyed listening today. If you did, I'd be really grateful if you would consider leaving a short review, as that helps people find the podcast and helps get it noticed. Hope you can join us next time. Goodbye for now.